Hi, Dina. Thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast today. It's wonderful to meet you.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, I've really been looking forward to talking to you, especially after reading your story. And I happen to love horses. So I've been waiting for this one. Could you start by sharing a little bit of information just about your backstory, kind of give us an overview, and then we can talk about things more in depth?
Yeah, so I had a huge amount of childhood trauma. I was abused by my father between the age of 7 and 14. So I obviously moved on in my life. I was also homeless at 16. And I think that sort of catapulted me into being this really strong warrior woman. I went off into the world and got married and had a couple of children. But I got into my early 30s and realized that I'd got to start to make changes, and that I needed to go back and actually heal this trauma, or align it with my life now and understand it. So I got back into horses in my early 30s, and I'd had a horse as a child. I'd lived on a small holding, and I'd had a couple of horses, and I remember having this amazing bond with this horse, and I wanted to go out jumping on her, and she was the something that made me have a purpose. And so I tried other things in my 20s that had helped me, because I knew I'd got this feeling that I needed to heal. I didn't know how. I'd got this missing piece, and I wasn't sure how I was going to make sense of that, but I know I was on a journey of searching.
Yeah.
So I came across a book in my early 30s, and that then catapulted me into this work.
Okay, so you mentioned that you, in your bio, I've gone all through your website, you worked with horses in the US, is that correct?
Yes, so yeah. I trained over in the US, I trained in the UK, and after I read this book of a transformation with a horse, I knew that felt really aligned. I mean, I didn't know what it was called at the time, but I just felt so aligned with this and so powerful and driven that I'd found this place I needed to be, and this missing piece. I always talk about it like a jigsaw. I felt like this missing piece of this jigsaw in me, and I was searching. So I tried different things through my 20s, my piano and dancing and different things to find this piece, and all of a sudden I found this missing piece, which was horses. And after I read that book, it sent me on a journey of learning, and I found this lady's website and learned more about her and her journey of healing. It was quite similar to mine, and knew that I'd got to go and train with her.
Where was she located in the US?
She's in Arizona.
Okay.
So I, at the time, I was about 37, and I wanted to come and train with her, and my marriage then failed. So that sort of put me back a little bit. Had to go back to work full time and look after my children and look after myself. And long story short, a few years later, I was still yearning to go and learn more about horses in this way. And all this time I've got horses. So I've had horses all through my 30s and never really been without them. And then all of a sudden in my early 40s, my life changed, and I had an opportunity to work for myself and thought, this is what I need to do. And I did write my business plan when I was 35, and I'd already started the Way of the Horse then. In my head, but I hadn't actually done any more about it. So in my early 40s, I found this training course in the UK, and by this time, these programs had come over to the UK and Europe. Okay. So I went all the way around the UK looking at different methods that I felt was right for me and would help me. And I went and did the training in the UK. And then about 4 years ago, I went to the US, to Arizona, and I trained in Arizona as well. So for me, that was the icing on the cake And then along with the trauma-informed skills that we now have, absolutely makes sense with the science around that we teach in the programs about the body and about the brain. And then we put it with horses.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to ask you more about how it works specifically with the horses and the healing, but I wanted to touch on your own personal trauma, if you're comfortable sharing that story, because it was a huge part of your life.
Yeah. So I lived in an ordinary family. We were quite wealthy, I would say. We were middle class, upper middle class. We had a lovely sort of small holding, and I had a horse, and we portrayed this image that, we had this perfect life. My parents had these lovely cars, and I had this horse, and everybody in the village thought, we were the perfect family. But behind that closed door was this sinister, black area that actually I hid for many, many years. And funnily enough, I came back to this house a few years later, in my 40s. And people from the village, I met people from the village, and they all said, oh God, we were so jealous of you. You had this amazing life. You had this pony in the back garden, and your parents had this amazing house. But they couldn't believe the real story of what went on in this abuse with my parents. And it was, it was quite horrific child abuse of aggression, of violence, and sexual abuse, where they used me as a game and a tool. And it wasn't until I was in my mid-40s that I woke up one day and I said to my husband, this has got to stop. I need to take him to justice. Although I'm way beyond that now, I've done a lot of healing. It's time for me to tell the world what these people did to me. And so it was Mother's Day about 4 years ago, and I went to the police and told them my story. And it was the first time that I'd gone into that type of detail of talking about it. I'd had talk therapy and completely shut it off. And I talked about it, and he was charged with 13 charges of child sexual rape. So and it was like a game to them. I was part of their pleasure, but there was a lot of violence and a lot of manipulation, and a lot of, if you say anything to anybody, I'll come and kill you. So, even when my children were growing up, I didn't feel safe enough to talk about what they'd actually done to me, what he'd done to me, and the fact that my mother didn't support me or save me, or even want to talk in court about what he did, was not a surprise to me, but to a lot of people, and certainly the police that we worked with. And the police had to do a huge investigation into where I lived, what had happened, the house that I lived in, all the stories I told about him looking at these girls in the houses opposite, and the areas that he did it. And there was the investigation proved everything that I said, and that's why we went to court. But for me, I never got the complete clearance of it or the complete justice, because his barrister said he was too ill to go 2 days before we were due to go to court. So I felt really let down by the criminal justice system in the UK, because at that time everything was virtual anyway. So why couldn't he attend? And they put it back a couple of times because of the COVID as well. And so I felt that actually COVID helped him out, and we didn't get the justice. But my mother emailed the police and said, yes, it did happen, and yes, I do know about it, but I don't want to go to court. But I think there was like a cult type of thing that was going on with those two, and they were still in touch even after they split, because they'd got this secret, they didn't want people to hear about.
Like unspeakable trauma that you don't realize, and it goes on in other households as well.
Yeah, and it's not because, you know, we weren't wealthy or we weren't, you know, we didn't have a nice lifestyle. It was completely the opposite of that. You know, we weren't rich, but we certainly weren't poor, and we had really nice things. But what went on behind those closed doors, you know, was a completely different world to what people saw. And even now, you know, people still hardly believe that it could happen, but you know, the police proved that he did, and they wouldn't have charged him. He was charged. But I had a big piece in the Daily Mail a few years ago. It was last May, actually, not May just gone, the May before, in the UK, talking about my story. But I certainly would like to talk more about it, to give people the strength to want to be able to talk. But many people did say to me, why have you left it till now to talk? And the reason for that is because you don't feel safe enough to talk about it. When my children were little, I was worried he would abduct them, or he would, you know, he would come into my life and he would manipulate them in the way that he did with me. And I never wanted that. So there was never any contact. He didn't know what they looked like, and he wasn't around them. He wasn't around me. And I knew where he lived, but other than that, you know, I didn't know. But the people around him, he manipulated in the same way that he did with me, and he gaslit them. So obviously what that did was take me on this journey of like healing, but also to understand it. So to understand the narcissism, to understand the gaslighting, but to personally develop myself, to build these walls of safety around me where I could protect myself from him ever doing that to me ever again.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on having the courage to do all of that. That had to be make you feel like you've come full circle in a way with your healing.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big thing. I never thought I would be brave enough to do it, but all of a sudden you wake up one day and feel the strength, and that inner strength, that inner power is amazing. Your instincts and your inner power is something that you can do, but you always have to wait till the time is right and you feel it's right. I just feel, you know, let down by the criminal justice system, because I felt that he wasn't a priority, and actually he was a huge danger to have on the streets, and to have around other families, because, you know, I knew what he was capable of, and I needed to prove that. So I needed to prove to other people as well who he really was, and not this person that he perceived to be.
Yeah. So your horses ultimately were kind of your saving grace through this, and now you have saved some horses as a result of your story too. So you have two separate organizations. Can you talk about both of them?
Yeah, so the Way of the Horse was obviously founded in 2015, and it is about a woman's healing with a horse. And the horse that helped me was a horse called Big Harry, and he was the one that started the business. Learned lots about myself and lots about him, and lots about the two of us and relationship building and trust. But I went on my training, and I started to, what I wanted, the aim of the business was to help other people where I didn't have help myself. And so we started to work with lots of schools. We work with traumatized children. There's been lots of young girls that have come through my program that have been very much the same. You know, they've been on the same journey as me, where they've had childhood trauma, they've had sexual abuse, and you know, they've been manipulated by their father figures, and so they've come through the program, traumatized children, for lots of different reasons. And so we've created this program. But what we learned was, you know, the horses that came into the program, and they were gifts. They were people that, you know, people either gave them to us because they couldn't be ridden anymore, or they came in as a rescue. You know, lots of these animals that came into us had got their healing journey as well to do. You know, we took one horse in that was emaciated. She was a traveller horse. She was left in a gateway. She'd had her legs tied up. She was full of worms and fleas, and not been fed, and she'd not had a drink in ages. And we took her in. The vet gave us a 50-50 chance. And what we learned was that these horses go on a similar journey of healing to us. So they're using the same parts of the brain that we are. They're either, you know, in their logical brain or in this reptilian brain that we actually use as well, because our primary response in survival is through the reptilian brain, through the fight, flight, and freeze. And so she would go into freeze, and she had something to show and give to somebody else that was on their healing journey. You know, we've had them where they come in and they're in flight, and you can see that part of you. So do I go into fight? Do I go into flight? Do I go into freeze? And so these animals that came through that were on their healing journey were actually teaching us lots of things about how we could heal too, and what that looked like from the outside. So, you know, Mia is like the flagship of the charity, which is the Rescue Ranch UK. And she came in, it was Christmas 3.5 years ago, and she was in this emaciated state. But when she recovered, and once she put her weight back on, and she started to look beautiful, and that the sparkle came back in her eye again, what she taught us was the power of mindfulness and being present, and how much she needs that from somebody else. So if we're not mindful in being present, we can't catch her in the field. If we've had a row with our husband and we can't, you know, we're all anxious, or we're chuntering about what you know, about the guy in the car that overtook us this morning, you know, she won't allow you to be with her unless you're present and you're in the moment. So you really have to be, you know, really have to have sorted yourself out before you work with her. And so she has this gift that she's brought to us, and she teaches people how to be present. She is the most amazing horse that has had this transformation, and what we do is we use that to help people. So we've got a few that have come through, but she's the main one. She's called Mia, and she's beautiful, and she's black and got a lovely black mane.
Yeah, and when this goes up on YouTube, I will be putting some pictures in just to share with the listeners and viewers so that they can see some of the horses too and where you work. Dina and I had planned to take a walk outside or take a look outside, but we both had some scheduled things. So we're doing it this way with the pictures, but you'll still get a chance to see them. So my next question was really any specific horse stories you wanted to share, or really, and you've just done that, but any of the rider stories, you know, of course, without naming names, any of that kind of stand out in your mind of girls, of women who have been helped by the horses?
Yeah, I mean, we've got, you know, a huge sort of portfolio of people that we've helped, but one in particular made the headline. She was in the Daily Mail in the UK, and that was Amanda, who is happy for me to talk about her story of her healing, because she was an NHS nurse. And we had, during the pandemic, we were able to continue our work because obviously we were outside and we were a mental health provision. And so we had a lot of nurses that came through the program, a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses, a lot of ambulance drivers, and a lot of police. So, you know, when they're in those regimented jobs, what happens to them is they have their boundaries crossed, and they have, you know, they become highly stressed and they become highly anxious. But actually, even with that wealth of knowledge of medicine or their own roles in the NHS or in, you know, in the hospitals, they still didn't have the tools to manage their stress and anxiety. And so because we're now trauma informed, we understand how the nervous system works, and we understand working with animals how to somatically use our body, which is amazing once you know what you're doing. And use the tool that we were given to be able to sense our environment just in the same way the horses were. So Amanda had a breakdown at work. She lost her nephew to COVID, and she was obviously on the front line, and she was off work. And she came through our 12-week program, and then she was able to go back to work because she had this new set of skills. And that's what this work is. Equine facilitated learning is not about mapping your brain, it's or talking about your trauma. It's about personally developing your skills to cope with your everyday life. But we're using the one of the doctors of science that works on our program, Dr. Emma Lethbridge, helps us understand how the brain works in a stress response, and also how the body functions with the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system and the vagus nerve. So those tools, given those tools, that she was able to then get back into work and work in the COVID wards, because she was on the front line with the COVID patients. And so, you know, she had an amazing transformation, and you know, we'd helped her daughter as well. But we've got lots of young girls that have gone through the service and, you know, gone into work. And one young girl actually that has gone through the service but has come back again for more help, because her life has changed, and something has changed in that she now knows that she needs these things that I teach. And so she's come back for help. And yeah, young people we help transform, you know, even psychodynamic counselors we've helped, because they're looking for something else that they're not trained in. And so, you know, over the 3 years of this flagship that we've got called Project Pony, we were able to really look at what works, what doesn't work, how can we get the impact, how can we change lives, and how can we change people's stress and anxiety. And because it's externally evaluated by, you know, a complete unique company away from us, the results are looked at the very beginning, how people are feeling. And because Emma's a doctor of science and she's a scientist, the standards are so high in how we evaluate them. And so at the very end of the program, the 12-week program, we can show these results of halving of anxiety, halving of stress, and also depression, because we're teaching people about the things that they need to know about themselves, that they're looking for. They're searching for those things, but they just don't know where to get them. And people don't always know to come to an equine therapist, because you know, it's something that, you know, I believe the world needs to be able to access better mental health and well-being services, and something that's holistic, so that, you know, we can help more people empower their family lives and their future.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And that's
the
what
work
Amanda was able to do.
Yeah. So you have the organization and the sister organization, and everything is science-backed, and it's just so amazing. Like, I can't imagine where you would go from here, but are there any future plans for expansion?
Well, one of the things being a not-for-profit organization is that we've not been able to fund a property for ourselves. We've rented a long time, and one of the things that feels wrong for me right now in my values and my integrity of the service that I provide is that we actually rent from somebody, and that chunk of money that is public money, if we've been funded the courses, goes into making somebody else rich.
Yeah.
And I don't think that feels right for the business. So we want to purchase our own piece of land, and that way, you know, the business will become self-sustainable, and there will always be a way of the horse. However, I'm obviously asked for, you know, help, and how have you got where you've got, you know, how have you turned, you know, this dream of yours into a reality and a business. And, you know, I very often need to be able to tell people how I've done it, but we've got to the stage now where we can actually franchise that. So, you know, I've started to, you know, I chat to people, tell them a bit about, you know, how we've got here, but there is so much to learn. I couldn't do it on a 10-minute call or a half an hour call. And so what we've now decided to do to be able to purchase this land, place, wherever it may be, is to sell the programs. So we've created a franchise model of the program, so the Project Pony and the I Can Do, and also we've got this online program as well. So during COVID, thanks to COVID, there were some good things that came out of it. I was able to deliver the program online, and so we would do the Zooms and teach people the science behind the programs, and then we would tell them to go off and do the activity with their animal, or somebody's dog, or you know, even a horse if you could do it. But we were able to teach online. So we've now created programs that relate to healing, and you know, everybody goes on a journey of healing, and everybody has something that has put them where they are, and that's part of who you are and your journey of healing. And so everything that we have created is now part of a journey. So we've got Road to Recovery, Highway to Healing. Project Pony was way before I started to think like this. But we want people to be able to access this from wherever they are in the world, and understand the trauma-informed work that we teach as well. So and give them the tools wherever, because you know, this can be so beneficial for people, you know, even on Zoom.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope that you are able to get the funding to be able to do what you're doing. I'm sure that there are private donations that come in as well. And I think you can do that through your website. Is that correct or no?
Yeah, people can donate. We don't have many donations come in, unfortunately, even though, you know, we rescue horses and we help people. We're now sort of starting to look at fundraising, and also, you know, I would like to do my own podcast too, because there is such a lot for me to teach people, you know, about my life, about my journey, about what I've learned, but also there's a lot of equine facilitated learning companies out there, and I want to be able to help people to get to this sort of standard, to be able to get funding and to be able to help other people and use the methods, but also fast track people. You know, it's been 8 years that I've been developing these programs, and we've got them to a standard, a really high standard, and I want people to be able to have these programs ready, set up with the manuals, ready to go, so they can just get straight on and help and heal this world that we live in.
Absolutely. So I only have 2 more questions for you before I ask where we can find you online. I always ask this question: what has been your greatest challenge leading you to where you are now, whether it's personal or through work? And on the flip side of that, what has been your greatest joy in the work that you're doing?
Oh, greatest joy. Greatest joy is seeing transformation. Sometimes, you know, I'm very busy and I have personal clients, private clients, and once I get into that flow, I'm so aligned. Absolutely love what I do, and seeing the change in people. And for them to learn from my wisdom as well. I'm all about sharing and that collaborative learning. And what was the last question? The other question? Your greatest challenge. I think you've had more challenge than most people have. So I think we've probably covered that one. Yeah, and also money. I would say money has been a big problem, because I started, I had a big dream, and I had £1 in the pot, and I was almost bankrupt before I started this. And I've only just started to say that. I'd got a lot of debt. I'd been a single parent for a while. I'd had another small business that hadn't worked, but I wasn't really aligned with it. And I had absolutely nothing, and I was just, you know, sometimes I hadn't got enough money to go to the shop and buy things. So for me, the biggest challenge has always been, you know, money and bringing money in, and people can see now what I've created, and they don't know the journey that I've had to go on to get there. You know, I started with £1 in a pot, 2 horses, and the day I took the land over, I remember standing looking at the land crying, and this was this 5-acre piece of land that I'd got, a small piece of land, and somebody pinched all my tools. So I cried, and I thought, oh my God, what am I doing? And here I am now, 8 years later. Yeah. Well, keep doing the work, because you're certainly doing good work. You had mentioned, I do like to ask for book recommendations, and you actually mentioned a book in the beginning that kind of was a catalyst to getting you started with your healing. What was that book? So the book that sent me on a journey of healing is The Tao of Equus. I'm not sure in America if they would call it The Tao of Equus, but I call it The Tao of Equus, and it's by Linda Kohanov, about her healing journey with horses. And it was her that catapulted me into equine facilitated learning. But what it also made me realize is that I wanted to write my own book as well, because my story was massive in comparison to Linda's, and I wanted to it was time at some point to share my story. And so I'm almost at the point of finishing my book, and it just got those little bits that were really painful that had to go in. So I'm hoping to be able to launch that as well, maybe later on in the year, because it's taken a couple of years to write and feel right. But I, wanted to share my journey and let people know as well that you can achieve your dream, and you can, and I'm still on that journey, but I'm much nearer to it than I was 8 years ago.
Yeah, and certainly when you do finish that book, let me know so that we can put it out there, and I'd like to read it as well. So where can our listeners and viewers find you online?
So you can find me on thewayofthehorse.co.uk. Our charity is rescueranchuk.co.uk. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, but we're not quite so big. Our main platform is Facebook and Instagram, and also we're on LinkedIn as well. So we would like to work with corporates as time goes on, and that's something now that our programs are CPD accredited. We're going to be aiming to work with people in corporate organizations. Probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago, that was where I was, and this work was so needed back then for me. So
yeah, well, great. I'm going to put all of your information that we can put in the show notes for sure, and we'll put the pictures in as well in the YouTube video. I'll kind of make that part of it. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today, and for sharing a very personal story. And I hope that you are able to achieve all of your dreams for all of those people that you're helping, and for the horses too.
Thank you, Carrie.
Okay.